Right, okay. Welcome to a special show from HammersChat.com where we're going to be discussing the transfers. It's not transfer news, it's not transfer gossip, but we've got a place where you can get all that, and I'll tell you in a second. It's a transfer opinions from the three of us here. I'm Gio from HammersChat.com, and I've got Gonzo. Good evening. Gonzo, how you doing?
I'm very well, my friend. Yourself?
I'm not too bad. Would you like to tell people where they can find the latest transfer news and gossip?
I certainly would. You can find the latest transfer news and gossip on claretandhue.info. We'll be running a little show, should be launching tomorrow morning. It'll be a short, condensed version of all the Claret and Hue news, so there'll be a little exclusive in there as well.
Fantastic, and it's called Rosette, by the way. I've also got Charlie with me as well. Charlie, good evening.
Hello, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I just told Gonzo.
I still ask anyway.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. If you're on social media, if you're on Facebook, go to facebook.com/HammersChat and like us on there. And if you're on Twitter, follow us at Hammers_chat. Also, the most important thing is do hit the subscribe button and check us, because every match we preview and every match review, as well as a new show that Gonzo will be doing with Claret and Hue called Rosette. We're going to be talking about players, but Ian Welford asked us at the start to kick all this off. Ian Welford requested us we talk about the big man, Andy Carroll. He did ask us before he started playing well, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Gonzo, you're not the biggest fan of him. Impact sub, you describe him as. In theory, would you like to sell him? And if so, how much would you like for him? What would your biting point be for Andy Carroll?
Whatever you could replace him for, but you've got to look and see. Bournemouth have just spent 10 million on a forward from Wolves, Afobe, today, and I think Burnley have got somebody, Gray. I think his name is Gray, and he's scoring goals for fun. They're quoting 15 million for him. Jordan Rhodes regularly gets quoted at 12 million. So I think even to get a sort of average or a striker who's scoring goals well in the Championship is going to cost you north of 10 million. I don't think we'll ever see our money back for Andy Carroll. I think the injuries are prohibitive, and I think the wages are, and I think the fee is. I think the guy is on 80 odd grand a week at the very least, and I think he's got 3 years left on his contract, and I think we'd be lucky to have him taken off us actually for a free, and another club to pay the money. And bearing in mind that we wouldn't get any money back, I think it was probably worth retaining him as an Impact sub if you'd be happy with that role.
Theoretically, Gonzo, if a £10 million bid came in for him, would you take it?
10 million with the wages off the payroll?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would take it?
Yeah, I think you'd have to, because that would probably equate to something like a net of 23 million or something like that. So I think you'd have to.
But if you got a replacement striker, you'd probably spend the 10 million replacing him. The striker would probably be commanding a fee round about that in order to get a striker just as good. You'd be paid the same wages, wouldn't you?
Not necessarily. I think he's on inflated wages. You've got to take into account the TV deal next year as well. I think you'll probably find next year, aside from Bayern Munich, Juventus, Barcelona, Real Madrid, all the rest of the clubs in the top 20 rich list are all going to be Premier League clubs. Premier League clubs will be richer than clubs like AC Milan and Inter Milan, which is really, it's hard to get your head around it really. So whilst those guys on the continent will, a very decent player on the continent, maybe not the top guys earn the big bucks, whatever club they're at, but those top guys, I mean, this season Real Madrid signed somebody called Kovacic, is that his name, from Inter Milan? You know the guy I mean?
Yeah, Kovacic.
That's what I said. They signed him, and I think somebody like that, even at Inter Milan, is probably going to be on about 40, 50 grand a week. Now, whilst obviously to you and I, that's a lot of money to a footballer, and particularly in Premier League terms, that's not a lot of money. And when you've got teams like Stoke buying Shaqiri and stuff like that, I actually think that you could probably take some of that money from Andy Carroll's wages. I think you could probably buy a player on the continent, 15 million, pay him the going rate, and get somebody decent.
Well, just to put your wages into context, Dele Alli at Tottenham's on 10 grand a week. Charlie, would you be taking? Do you have the same thoughts on Andy Carroll, or are you different?
No, I like him. I like him. I think, although I have said multiple times since the beginning of the season, he's the greatest super sub you could ever imagine. I like him, and I think that if he was to have again one of those, and I know I don't know when the last time it happened for him, but if he was to have a season where he just had no injuries, I think he would be an absolutely incredible striker to have, and someone who I don't think there's anyone quite like him in the Premiership. You know, Christian Benteke is a bit like him. Wilfred Boney, again, a little bit like him. But no one is as good in the air as he is, and no one is as powerful as he is. I think, again, it's one of those situations where because he is so injury prone, yeah, I probably would take an amount of money for him, but it would be more than 10 million. It would take more than that for me, personally, anyway.
I'm the same as you, Charlie. I think he's good enough to start. I think we're seeing a new Andy Carroll this season. I think we're starting to, in the last few games, see a new West Ham with Carroll up front. I think we're starting to adapt to play to Andy Carroll, and I think we're seeing an Andy Carroll that can also adapt to play to the way that we've been playing at the start of the season. I'm looking forward to seeing how it changes until May. I think it'll change a lot more, and I think he'll become suited. I get what you're saying, Gonzo, about cutting our losses. We've spent a lot of money on him. That's part of the reason I would keep him as well, because you've invested so much time and money on him. I think you almost have to believe there's going to be reward coming at the end of it. But we'll wait and see. But let's talk about another striker of ours, Zarate, linked with Malaga. The links cooled down a wee bit. Charlie, you're not the biggest lover of Zarate. Were you hoping he would go?
It's probably cooled down because they've watched him play football. I think... Was I hope? Yeah, kind of, because I think he's on. Again, I think he's someone who's on probably deceptively high wages, given the fact that he had to pay off his contract with Velaz to come here. I suspect we gave him the money through the contract to pay for that sort of thing, and so I think he's probably on quite high wages. I think he's a luxury player. I don't think we need him particularly. I think if we're looking for places to cut the squad down in order to raise funds to get someone else who we might need, then I think he's probably one of the candidates I would put at the top of the list to get rid of, just because, again, his wages are so high. And again, as I've always said, he is a technically gifted footballer, even though I don't particularly like what he does at the end of it. He is a technically gifted footballer and someone who could command a fee. But, yeah, I would get rid of him personally.
Well, we'll discuss someone else that's probably high on your candidate list in a second. But Gonzo, would you be disappointed to see Zarate go? The peak quota was 5 million. Would you take that, or would you want a little bit more?
Well, I like him. I don't know. A lot of it is because I sort of feel an allegiance to him, because I on the forum particularly, I took a lot of stick last season. But what it really was particularly under Allardyce, we were devoid of any sort of flair. And the two players that could actually beat a man and dribble past a man was Zarate and Ravel Morrison. So I was really disappointed to see them both shipped out last season. And he scored the winner against Crystal Palace, and then he was shipped out to QPR. And I said at the time, what are we doing getting rid of this quality player who can score goals and inject a bit of flair into the team? Why would we be getting rid of him when we're so lacking in that department? And in many respects, because I said if we had the right manager who could manage him, somebody will get him on there and scoring goals. And to a certain extent, I feel vindicated because he has scored goals for us, and he has impacted matches for us. So I think there's that. The truth of the matter is, though, we're not devoid of flair anymore. We've got Lanzini and we've got Payet, who you would put above him. There's probably not a lot in it technically, but their brains are a bit sharper than his. So whilst his feet can do everything that his brain asks them to, I don't think his brain actually asks his feet to do the right things at the right times, if you know what I mean. I'd like to see us keep him because it only takes 2 injuries and we have no flair. So for that reason, I'd keep him. I think he's on 42,000 a week, by the way.
Yeah, you could argue it's his attitude rather than his brain. I think he's got the footballing brain because he can just pass players, and there's someone in this club that I don't think has a footballing brain to do that. I'm ready to talk about him in a second.
You talk about Charlie?
That's a bit rough. I just don't think Zarate has attitude to be a team player, unfortunately. I think when the going gets tough, I think he's one person that says, I'll be subbed, please, Mr. Bilic. I don't mind coming off. I just get that feeling about him. But let's talk about someone that we don't think's got a footballing brain. I certainly don't. I don't think you two do either. Is Enner Valencia. He's the one player I would be sad to see go. I'd rather see him go than Zarate or Andy Carroll, put it like that. And he's one player I'd probably take a loss on, actually. If we court to pay 10, 11 million for him, I'd be very surprised if a club offered half that for him. I just don't see it in him. Sometimes we see glimpses, like the crosses he's done, but then he just disappears the rest of the game. That should be giving a player a confidence boost to get into the game. Setting up a cross like that against Liverpool should just give you a lift, give you the confidence, but I just don't see it in him. Charlie, would you want to see Enner Valencia go, or do you think he needs more time at West Ham?
He's another one who I think we wouldn't be able to get the money we we reportedly bought him for. Of course, there was that one rumor about Chelsea paying 20 million, but we all know that was rubbish at the time. I think Enner Valencia is one of the most frustrating players we have, and it's because he is sort of typical of this weird theory I have that the majority of our players are really, really good at some things and really, really bad at others. He looks like someone who could compete. He's got a ridiculous jump on him. I mean, he rises above almost other people completely. It's insane. He's quick. He's got a really good shot when he pulls it off, but then he's got no ball control. And despite the fact he is so quick, he can't dribble past people. And I think it's probably because of his ball control. He's someone who we've paid a lot of money for, and I would personally I would keep him. Just because at the beginning of last season, him and Sacco just seemed to work together so well together. And I think he's someone who the rest of the team needs to be built around him in order to get the best out of him. Unlike someone like Payet, who can just come in, I think, probably anywhere and just be the greatest thing that's ever happened. So I would keep him, but if we were to get the money we paid for him back, I would probably accept that.
But Charlie, in the summer, we're supposed to be at our top signing is supposed to be a striker. We're going to talk about potentials in a second. In order to get one of them, surely there's going to be too much strikers at the club. Jelavic isn't going to go anywhere. He's not going to have a year left on his deal. No one's going to take him, even if he was free. I don't think anyone would take him. But he's also Bilic's trustworthy striker. The three we've just spoke about is probably the three top candidates, because Sacco's not going to be going anywhere. So Zarate, Valencia, and Carroll, one of them might have to leave. Who would you sell, Charlie? Because you said you'd keep all three.
No, get rid of Zarate instantly. But if it was between, honestly, it was quick as he possibly could. But if it was between Carroll, Sacco, and Enner, that's a bit difficult. I think Enner, it really depends for me at the end of the summer what the situation is with our wingers. Because although we all know he's not naturally a winger, he gets put there and clearly shows something in training where people think he can play on the wing. And so if Moses leaves and we are only looking for a striker and we can't replace him, then he might need to stay for that reason. But out of the three, if I had no choice and I had to get rid of either Carroll, Sacco, or Enner, I would get rid of Enner.
I agree with you there. Gonzo, let's talk about candidates for the summer. It's very unlikely we're going to do any business in January. Let's not talk about January. Summer. Apparently we've got 30 million to spend, and our biggest signing is going to be a striker. Whether we believe that it's the budget or not is a completely different story. But there's been a few names banded, but not that many actually. Who do you want to see come in, Gonzo? Is there anyone in your head that you're thinking that's the striker I want at West Ham?
Not off the top of my head, but then again, my knowledge of the European game is absolutely terrible. I think we missed a trick with Hernandez. How he's Leverkusen, I believe, and I think he's banging in goals from 19 and 22 possibly. Whether he would have fit into our system, I don't know. He's that sort of goal poacher, and we seem to like the person to run the channels, and in much the same way as Sacco does. I don't know. I think there was a link with Doumbia as well, and he looks like he's been a quality striker. He plays for the Ivory Coast. If I was going to do anything, and as I say, we'd have to leave out European game, I would, if it's rumoured Pep Guardiola goes to Man City. If Pep Guardiola goes to Man City, it will be much the same as when Brendan Rodgers went into Liverpool and he said that Andy Carroll does not play in my system. Well, if Pep goes to City, then Wilfred Boney will not play in his system at all. And I think that's the guy we go and get because he can play within our system. I think he's fit, strong, he's got a hell of a shot, and he can join in with the players. He's a little bit more mobile than Andy Carroll.
Well, that's one of the players I've got down here because it's been rumoured today that City are looking to offload them already and they're trying to get him back to Swansea and trying to recoup some of their money. Charlie, our owner said what he said about Charlie Austin. Right, it's probably going to make it not happen, but in theory, let's play make-believe for a second. His contract's up in the summer. It doesn't look like he's going anywhere. Charlie Austin said he's staying at QPR regardless. He's free in the summer. Would you like to see West Ham going for him and say, look, forget about what Mr. David Sullivan said. Here's a contract.
Charlie Austin is a very capable striker, and unlike he's very, very well rounded as well. He's powerful. He can header the ball. He can shoot just as well. He's got good movement. He's quicker than other strikers. I think he's very, very well rounded. in the situation you'd given me where he's on a free, then yes, I would like to see us go back for him. But I'm going to say something that everyone's going to help. Everyone's going to hate. I made this case at the beginning in the summer, and this was even before we bought Jelavic. I don't think we need another striker. I think we've got too many at the club already, and we've got deficiencies in other places we need to spend money on, right back and on the wings. Especially once Moses and Jenkinson goes, we're screwed. So I would rather us see buy quality players in those positions than up front. However, if I had to make the choice of signing Charlie Austin on a free, I think it's something you have to go in for because he is genuinely very, very good. And I mean, we saw last season, he's very, very good.
Well, Gonzo, neck on the line time now. There's rumours that Jurgen Klopp is happy to sell Daniel Sturridge, quoted at 25 million, Mr. Injury prone. However, as that type of player, West Ham have to take a risk on to get to the next level, to go from an outbrink of European football into our new Flash Stadium. We want a big top striker. He's a name that we couldn't get in. We can put him up front when he's fit, and he does batter in goals when he plays, but is that type of striker West Ham might just have to take a punt on? Would you take a punt on him for 25 million?
No, I think that's the last thing West Ham needs to do. I made the chairman absolutely bang on about Charlie Austin, by the way. I think he is injury prone. No one's going to care about me saying it, but I think he was absolutely right. I also think he's a box player, by the way, and I don't think that's really what we do. I don't think he drifts far out that central sort of channel on the pitch. The last thing we need, bearing in mind what's happened with Andy Carroll, is to purchase another striker with injury problems. He's absolutely quality on his day, Sturridge, one of the best in the league, absolutely. But I don't think we're at that desperate club anymore. Charlie mentioned earlier about Enner Valencia lacking in certain areas, and he's right, because that's been the sort of supermarket that we've been shopping in. You know, those top guys that can do everything, Yaya Toure or Sanchez. Sanchez is skillful, he's fast, he works hard, he can head. Those guys cost big bucks. We have, up until this time, we've had to shop in Lidl's. You know what I mean? We've had to take somebody that might be able to pass, but they can't shoot, or they can dribble, but they can't run very fast. These very rounded players are very expensive. Well, I think next year, what that does, that stops us having to beg, borrow, and steal. I think next year we're in Waitrose, to be quite frank. And I think we go in there and we get these top guys. They may not be the 50, 60 million, but I think we can go in there and we can get people more like Payet, actually, who can run, dribble, and score goals and do things like that. So I think we can get a relatively proven striker, or a striker of promise. Don't forget, Daniel Sturridge is probably not a 22-year-old anymore. I'm going to say it here, but I don't know how old he is. What, 25, 26, 27? He's possibly a 27-year-old croc, and I think we can possibly do someone that can stay on the pitch all the time.
Yeah, I agree with you with Sturridge. Way too risky for 25 million. However, I would go in for Austin. I don't believe this injury thing he's got. He plays heaps of games per season. You look how many appearances he makes per season. He makes more than Sakho. And if Austin's injury prone, then so Sakho. We need to start looking at Sakho.
Sakho is injury prone. I've always said it. He plays 5 or 6, 7 games in a row, and then he misses a few. He just never gets a big injury, so people don't say it.
So why are we happy to keep him at the club? But Andy Carroll, we've got to sell Andy Carroll because he's injury prone, Gonzo.
I wasn't going to sell Andy Carroll at the start. I said I'd keep him as a super sub. You started.
No, but just West Ham fans in theory. When he missed that, well, it was supposed to be one game at Swansea and it ended up being 2. But when he missed that one game, social media, we've got to sell Andy Carroll. He's injury prone. We can't be doing this anymore. You just said yourself, we need how much wages we would save in that by getting rid of him. We should maybe look at it. But should we then not be looking at Sakho and saying, well, you're just as bad, if not worse? But yet he seems to go under the radar.
Yeah, but I mean, he cost 3.5 million, whereas actually Andy Carroll, when he went to Liverpool, cost 10 times that. He was 35 million. He's on a third of the wages. I mean, when he came in, Sakho came in on £25,000. That's been up to 35. It's not a case, you can't judge them the same. Actually, Carroll's got to be a lot better than Sakho. I don't think he is. I think Sakho's better than Carroll was as a footballer. So actually, in terms of somebody, that's okay. I mean, it's not ideal, but if Sakho can play half the games each season, or whatever, 2/3 of the game each season, that's okay for someone that costs 3.5 million and is very, very light and on an impact on the wage bill. People like Sturridge or people like that are going to command 100. I think it's 150 grand a week at Liverpool. People like that. Well, I mean, you buy someone for that money, you've got to play every game, and I think that's the pressure with Carroll. He's our top earner, and he's not been available up to now. But perhaps his fitness has it's sorting itself out though.
Well, let's hope so. Anyway, Boney is one I want to see. The other name I would consider is Remy at Chelsea if he does shift out. However, he's going to be 29 at the start of the new season or whatever. Bit old for my liking, bit risky. Let's talk right back. One man in particular we're going to talk about, Sam Byram. Charlie, do you want to see him at West Ham? Is he your right back?
He's not. I don't know who my first choice is, but it's not Sam Byram. I think we're going to have the exact same problems we have with Jenkinson with him. He's very, very good going forward. He's not as adept going at the back. So much so that Leeds have started playing him further up the field. I think he's a talented footballer. He's not as young as he once was, but he's still relatively young. If we could get him if we get him in the summer on a free, that's perfect with me. I'm happy to have him and someone else, but I think we're going to run into the exact same problems we have with Jenkinson than we have with him.
Gonzo, who's your right back? Is Sam Byram the one for you? He's the one for me. He's the one I want. He's cheap, dirt cheap. If we can get him in January, it costs next to nothing. We've hit our wage bill, apparently. We're loaning back to Leeds, and then that way the wage bill factor goes. We basically pay Leeds a bit extra in the fee to cover his wages from now until the summer. Gonzo, is he the man for you?
Don't know enough about him, and regardless of whether he's the man for me, I think he might well be the man for the club, and that's really probably the most influential thing. Really, they want him. They want to wait until the summer. There's big talk about him being on a free. He won't be on a free. He's 22. It'll be a tribunal fee. So whatever happens, he is not going to be a free agent. They'll haggle in the same way that Liverpool have having to haggle with Burnley over the Ings transfer. That's just what happens when they're of that age group. I'll tell you what I would do if it was me. I would send Jenkinson back to Arsenal when the season's done and said, look, you're not playing him. We'll have Debussy, please. That's what I'd do, or get the fella from Newcastle, the right back. Matt, is that his name?
Yeah. He's one of the right backs in the league as well. We're also like Vittori Bilic used to know. We're not going to talk too much about him because if these two say they know a lot about Vittori, I don't really believe them. In all honesty, I don't think any of us have seen him play week in, week out. But Bilic trusts him. I think that's good enough for us all here. But I'm going to talk now about the youngsters very quickly before we disappear. I've got 5 names here, young players at West Ham United. I want to know what you're doing with them in the summer. Are you selling them? Are you saying you've not made it? You're getting on at the age now, we're going to have to cut you. Do you loan them out for the season, maybe a short-term loan, or do you keep them at West Ham and try and get them game time here? Charlie, start with you. Go with the easiest one probably so far, Reece Oxford.
Oh, you keep him. You keep him at the club for another year.
Gonzo, Reece Oxford.
Just big future, build the thing around him, but get him out for 6 months. Turn him into. We saw him. He came on yesterday. He's a big, tall boy, skinny boy. To turn him into a man, get him out, get him down Nathan's, having a couple of pies, and then get him out for 6 months on loan, bring him back, and let's start playing him in the first team.
I would like to see him stay at West Ham, but I'd like to see him used a lot more. I don't think he's getting enough game time as it is. When we're winning, stick him on for the last 10 minutes, like we did against Wolves. Just keep putting him on when we can. The man that I think has got the most competition in the team, Cullen. Charlie, what are you doing with Cullen?
Loan him out. I think this year was his year. I really thought this year was his year. At the beginning of the season, when he was playing those first couple of European games, he played a couple of pre-season games. He looked so close to being of a quality that would be able to force sort of people in the squad down the pecking order just off it. And so I thought, get him out for a season, give him a season-long loan in a Championship club or a League One club. He looked good enough. He really did look the part. I can't stress that enough. So I would loan him out next year again. I think he's got to have a season under his belt properly before he can force his way into the first team. But loan him out.
Gonzo, Cullen.
Yeah, I think loan him out, but I think the country are going to force that issue. I think his country rate him very highly, and they want him playing football. I see him as a big future, and he's technically very good, so it would benefit everybody if he went out on loan.
Yeah, for me, it depends if we're playing European football or not. If not, I'm for the loan as well. Send him up to Scotland. He'll learn how to be a man up here. The one that they're really going to have to think about, Samuelson. Gonzo, what are you doing with Samuelson? He's fantastic at Peterborough right now. He's probably the position we're actually lacking at the minute, someone that can play wide and just do a little bit of everything. What are you doing with Samuelson, Gonzo?
He's sensational. Leave him out for the season. Barry Fry actually wants him back next season. He thinks that Samuelson's going to make the difference between promotion. They're in the playoff position at the moment. He thinks he's that good, and he's scored consecutive games, and they've both been wonder goals as well. He thinks he'll make the difference. He thinks they get promoted, Championship. He said, send him back to me and I'll turn him into a £20 million player. That's what Barry Fry said this week. I mean, he is brilliant, but personally, I think he's good enough. If you do get rid of Zarate like Charlie wants, then Samuelson takes that role. He plays understudy to Lanzini and Payet, and would just sit on the bench and then come off. He's very good. They've dropped a what's it there, Man City, by letting him go.
Charlie, thoughts on Samuelson? What are you doing with him?
Again, another person at the beginning of the season, those Europa League games, preseason games, he was really genuinely fantastic. There was these glances of just brilliance that he had, and I think he's someone who does have a very big future. I think he'll probably become a leading Premiership winger. You know, for a sort of top 6 team, he looks like a guy who could fill that role. I don't think he'll become the biggest player in the world, but you know what I mean. I think he is someone who has to be loaned out again. But if we do get rid of Zarate and possibly Enner Valencia to accommodate another striker, keep him at the club. Because when we had those injury periods like we just had, like I think he would have been perfect to fill in for Payet and Lanzini for the few games they were away.
I would keep him. Regardless of who comes and goes, I would keep him because I think he's got that potential. I want to see him more. And I want us to take advantage of the fact that the Championship have still got that window. After our window closes and the season's underway, the Championship have still got that loan window, which is plan B, if you like. So come September, he's not cutting it. He's not looking, he's struggling. We just loan him out then. But I would like to see him start the season with us anyway. 3 players now who, if they're coming to the age now, I think they've got to start getting game time. The first one, I think we'll all agree on something here. Reece Burke, bigging up at Bradford right now. Gonzo, what are you doing with Reece Burke in the summer? He's got competition. We've got 4 centre backs. What are we doing?
Well, I mean, I think the contract for Collins has hindered him slightly. I think you make a good point about the age. He's not 16, 17 like Reece Oxford. He's 19 or 20 now, and you're right, next year 21. That is really the time. He got injured at Bradford. He's come back. It's very interesting now. Coventry are rumoured to be interested in signing him permanently. I don't think we should let him go. I should keep him. Well, we need to see what happens with Collins next season. We don't need to see what happens with Ogbon. I mean, we're very, very lucky. I don't know. Wait and see. But I'm not sure he's going to want to be loaned out permanently. Don't be surprised to see someone coming in with a bid. If he carries on his good loan form, someone comes in with a bid of $5 million or something. We find it tempting, you know.
I just hope if that happens, Gonzo, we don't mess up and we have clauses in there that allows us, 1, to buy him back, and 2, if he gets sold on, we get a large chunk of that fee. Charlie, what are you doing with Reece Burke?
We've gone from being incredibly unblessed at centre back to being unbelievably blessed in the seemingly a season. I think he is at the stage. Do you know what? At the end of last season, I thought he looked very good. I thought he looked getting onto the Premiership standard. You know, but that's sort of wherever we were at. Of course, we've now got Ogbonna, Reed, Tompkins, and James Collins ahead of him. I think we loan him out for a 6-month period and see what happens with Collins. To be honest.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to loan him out. We've got too much centre backs, I think. But I think this next season might be our last season to loan him out before we really got to make a decision whether we keep him and throw him in the deep end or say, you're not going to cut a West Ham, mate. Sorry. The 2 players now I think that we're going to have to maybe cut. Gonzo, Elliot Lee, he's come back from Blackpool. Depends who you believe. If you believe Sam Allardyce's assistant, he's missing mum and dad, or you believe Elliot Lee. But let's not forget, his dad is one of the most professional footballers possible, so he's not exactly got crap advice to go on. So I think I'm going to side with Elliot here and give him the benefit of the doubt. But what are you doing in the summer with Elliot Lee, Gonzo?
He's going to have to go, and it's no reflection on his ability. I think it might do him a world of good. He might be one of these people that, almost like a Leon Britton, if you like, who gets released and actually goes on and has a really good career at another club. And that's not me saying he's going to be crap. I do mean a good career. But there's been successive managers now who've not used him, and I've been saying for a long, well, why don't we chuck Lee in there? At some point, you have to get over yourself and think, well, actually, probably Bilic and Allardyce, well, maybe not Allardyce, know a bit more about football than I do, and, you've got to sort of trust their judgment, McDonald at Blackpool and whatnot, and say that he's probably not going to make it at West Ham.
Charlie, what are you doing with Mr. Elliot Lee?
I think his time's passed. I like him. I really do think he's got qualities to succeed, and he's shown when I've seen him play. Again, this is caveat, not seen him play a lot, obviously, but when I have seen him play, he's linked up well with other players. So he's not, and then he has made runs into good positions. So he seems to have everything to succeed. I think, like Gonzo said, I think he's one of those players who's going to probably leave and go on to have a decent career. I think he's probably the current squad's Julian Stanislas in that sense.
Yeah, I think he's like the next Freddie Sears. He's gonna do well at lower league. He will be in the championship. He will score goals in the championship. I don't think he's good enough. I think it's time that sometimes we get too sentimental about the academy, and because he's an academy player, you think he's going to do well. You get a little bit blinded, if you like. I think we just have to say, I think it's time that we cut you. I think this was a season actually. I think this was the season he had to make or break it, and he's not made it yet. The other one, which is going to be a bit more controversial than Elliot Lee, is we signed him in the summer, and he looked quality pre-season, I thought. Mr. Diego Poyet. Gonzo, what are you doing, Poyet? He's been in and out with loans, but he's got so much competition in the centre of the park as well.
It's gonna be difficult, and funny enough, on the hammerschat.boards.net on the forum, Newmarket wrote a very good thread today, and in it he was talking about the attacking players, the creative players, and I made the point on it that actually that's the really hard thing to do. That's the commodity, unlocking a defence, scoring goals, and Poyet's not that. He's a stopper. He's a breaker up of play. He's a defensive midfielder, and there are a lot of them around. And you look at how Obiang played at the weekend. Kiati tackles, even Noble, tackles a bit as well, and is a bit of an all-rounder. I can't see any place for him. I just don't see him excelling at that. Again, he can have a good career, going to be a good professional, and Freddie Sears' analogy was a good one, but I just don't see it happening for him, and why should we expect anyone to sit around and wait around for years just for us? We're going up. If we were going to stay at the level we were, maybe in 2 or 3 years it'd make it. But we're moving to a big stadium. We're going to have a big budget this summer, and we're going to be one of the biggest clubs in Europe. So, unfortunately, not.
Charlie, Mr. Poyet, what are you doing?
I think I rate him very, very highly. I think he's got all the qualities of Obiang and Song in that he is incredibly calm on the ball and controls possessions fantastically. And I've very, very rarely seen him misplace a pass. He's a fantastic passer of the ball. He maybe doesn't have as good a range as Pedro Obiang, but also he's a lot younger. Not massively younger, but a bit younger anyway. There is so much competition there. And I think his future probably lies very heavily to do with if we end up keeping Song at the end of the season, which seems to be the case with the Barcelona thing. If we keep him, then I think, unfortunately, I don't see Diego Poyet having much of a future at West Ham. But I rate him massively. I really do. I think he could go on to be a Premiership midfielder quite easily in the future if we do let him go.
I should have looked this up, but how old is Diego Poyet?
He's 21 now, I believe.
I was raised. He's 23, isn't he?
Yeah, I thought he was 22. But my point is, doesn't matter how old he is, as long as he's one of these 3 ages. My point is, and we say is, if we keep him, he now takes up one of them spaces, and when we register our Premier League squad, he takes up a space. Reece Oxford does not. Josh Cullen does not. They're too young. You don't have to register them. They're surplus to the 20. You get your 25, then you get Oxford, you get Josh Cullen, you get those youngsters that don't count. Diego Poyet counts, Elliot Lee counts, and for me, if you were to include them two, you've only got 23, and it's not that much really, and that's why I think them two have to go. That's why I think Diego, sorry mate, I would have liked to see you stay because I thought he was fantastic pre-season, but to take up a space. If we sent Song back and we didn't take anyone in, then that's his space. He can take Song's space. But before I ask these guys one important question, do hit the subscribe button while you're here and come on to hammerschat.com, click on the forum and get involved. But the big question for them, Gonzo, right now, are you keeping Alex Song for next season? Or are you saying get back to Spain?
Oh, I think it's a watch this space, I think, to be perfectly honest with you. A little bit of a naughty question there. Yeah, I think it's watch this space. Everyone knows I like Song. it wasn't great for him yesterday at the Wolves game. Didn't have a very good game. Obiang was good. He needs to up it, and he certainly needs to get to the level that he was playing at the start of last season, and certainly the level that won him the transfer from Arsenal to Barcelona.
Charlie, Alex Song, keep him for another year on loan or get back to Spain?
Although everyone yesterday sort of complained quite heavily about him, and probably quite rightly, he had a poor game. But again, I'm a big fan of Songs, and what I saw in yesterday's game was the potential for an incredible partnership between him and Obiang, because Obiang, as I said on the fan cam that I did for West Ham Fan TV, shout out to them, as I said on that, Obiang is a simple version of him. He plays the simple stuff really well. He's very sensible. He lays soft passes everywhere, but he cleared up after Alex Song really well. Now, he shouldn't have to clear up after him, but as we get more creative players ahead of him and not people who are immobile, I think Alex Song becomes a better player. And I think if you have that safety net of Obiang next to him, he's going to do very well. Personally, I would keep him because he would be on a free transfer at the end of the year. Although I really don't want to let go of Diego Poyet, but yeah, I would keep him.
Yeah, I don't think he's just... I've never seen the Wolves games. I'm not going to say he had a bad game last game. He's had a bad year. The whole of 2015, he was pretty poor, riddled with injuries, and he's no spring chicken anymore. I think he's at the point of his career that this next move of his is his last payday. This is his last big contract. You talked about Daniel Sturridge. We don't want to take risks on injury, people like that. Sorry, but I think Alex Song is starting to come into that category a wee bit where maybe West Ham of 2 years ago, you have to take players like that. You have to gamble. But you're right, Gonzo. We don't have to gamble anymore, in my opinion. I think we're big enough. We've got that presence about West Ham United with the move in the summer to say, no, it's a privilege to play for us. Currently, it's probably a privilege to have Payet in our team. It's probably a privilege to have Lanzini. Next season, it's no longer a privilege. They're going to be privileged to play for West Ham, in my opinion, anyway. But Gonzo, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
My pleasure.
Charlie, thank you as always.
Thank you very much.
And I've been Gio, we've been hammerschat.com. Do come onto the forum as well. Remember, Twitter at hammers_chat, facebook.com/hammerschat, and hit the subscribe button. Thank you.